Awesome. Well, we've got Jordan Steele up next. Jordan, we're grateful that you're here. Grateful that you're able to join us. We're so
Yep.
grateful that the Zoom room is working again, and hoping it didn't cause any frustration if you tried to jump on earlier. So,
No, it let me right on. Not a problem.
okay. Well, Jordan, where are you calling in from this morning or this afternoon? I
Uh,
guess it is.
yep, Wheatland, Wyoming.
Okay.
It's 75 degrees today, and we're supposed to get 4 to 8 inches of snow tomorrow. So
Is
that's
that,
our state.
did you say 48 or 4 to 8?
4 to 8. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It is
that's
Wyoming. 48's
that's
not out of the
that's not as
question.
bad. That's not as bad. That's right.
All right. Yeah, well, cool. Well, we're grateful you're able to join us. You're coming representing Ranching for Profit, right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
and you also kind of do double duty. Well, you do a lot of things. I'm sure you're going to talk about that in your presentation, but we're grateful that you're here. We're grateful for the support of Ranching for Profit. Just like Wally said, his plug was, if you haven't been, go sign up and go. So pretty simple.
I appreciate that, Wally.
Yep. Cool.
So perfect. Yeah. So when Jared reached out to me, he asked me for a title, and it's always a little dangerous when people ask us to reach out and they're like, "Talk about whatever you want," and that's can be a little scary for you guys, I'm sure. But so I went down I said, let's build a profitable mindset that follows the theme for you, and I always like pushing the mindset stuff, and I probably should have got on 30 minutes earlier and listened to Bart and Sonny. It looked like there's a lot of good stuff on that one too. So um So yeah, a little bit introduction about myself. I grew up in Wyoming and went to school, high school and college at the university here, met my wife, and then we lived in Kansas for a while, and then we just moved back 3 years ago. So now working with ranch management consultants, we do the Ranching for Profit school. So the main motto is knowing how to raise crops and livestock is not the same thing as knowing how to run a business that raises crops and livestock. All of us grew up riding horses, driving tractors, fixing fence, et cetera, et cetera. Not a lot of us grew up with money management or people management or stuff like that too. So that's really what the school dives in on. It's a week long, and we push on paradigms and people and mindset. So then we also do executive link. Michael Gerber's got a quote there. It says, "When you're self-employed, you work for a lunatic," right? So we let ourselves do the fun things in the business and not always do the stuff that we maybe know we should do. So it's a next level accountability program. We set you up on a board of advisors with other ranchers, and then we facilitate those meetings either in hotel convention centers a couple times a year, or one set of meetings is actually hosted on the ranch with your other board members. So I'm sure what you're also referring to too is my wife works for Ranch Right, and I think you've had Haskell on, and I also do a handful of taxes on the side too. So that's where a lot of my financial knowledge came from Kansas with that. So happy to go into that stuff too. But a little bit about the Ranching Profit School. Here's just a physical map of where everyone came from in our 2023-2024 schools. So you can see it's primarily central United States, but we've got out in the coast a little bit. But if you're to draw that oval around southern Alberta down to Texas, that's where most of the people are coming from, it seems like. We always start off with paradigms at the school. And so paradigms, to just define a paradigm, one simple one is just a deeply held subconscious belief. And we all have paradigms. They're shaped by how you were raised, where, when, the people you hang out with, your education, your experience. I actually like Stephen Covey's view best, or his definition best. He calls it the lens through which we see the world. So all of our paradigms influence our actions, and our actions influence our results. So if we are not happy with our results, whether it be in our business or our marriage or whatever it may be, we need to do different actions to get different results. But if we don't change our paradigms, our underlying paradigms, it's going to be hard for us to actually change those actions to get different results. So that's where we push on those a lot. It's easy to pick on money, because I always say money and wealth paradigms are pretty thick in ranching. And these start from a young age. We always pick on high school age kids, the parents of high school age kids at the school. So, okay, a kid wants to go to a movie, right? So what do they ask for? They ask for money. Well, you give them money, maybe you give them money for the movie the first time, but then the second or the third time you say, okay, no, you need to go do something. I'm not going to pay for your movies all the time, right? So they go scoop the snow or mow the neighbor's yard or do something like that, right? Well, over time, what does that paradigm build into us? It tells us that more work equals more money. And that's not always true. More physical work does not always mean more money, right? So that's one of those paradigms we have to challenge on. And that's where we talk about in differentiating the what be versus the whit be. And that's working on the business versus working in the business. And so that's where we always have to challenge our paradigms. Our paradigms also tell us what circle we're in. And I've always liked the Stephen Covey circles here. So on the inside is the circle of control. That's the dark green one. Well, we can directly impact through our thoughts, words, and actions. We have complete control over the outcome. And then in the center is the circle of influence. It usually involves other people ranging from family, friends, colleagues, complete strangers, reviewers. We do not have control over the eventual outcome, but we can potentially influence the outcome through what we are able to control. So that one's kind of self-explanatory. And then on the outside is the circle of concern. We have no control over the outcome on that outer circle. And I just took this screenshot here from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. In the circle of concern is weather, politics, and other people's behavior. Well, where is it really, really easy to spend our time? Worrying about or talking about the weather, the politics, other people's behavior, right? And primarily mentioning the government here. So our circle of concern, to me, is just negative energy. And we need to stay out of that. And what's the easiest way to stay out of the circle of concern? This is my opinion, but just turn off the news, right? Especially now. Just turn off the media. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, and we're going to make the best decisions for our business and our life that we can. So as we focus on our circle of control, we can control more in our business and our lives. Essentially everything we can. The circle of concern, what it does is it allows us to be in a victim mode. Okay. And we don't want to be in a victim mode. We want to be in accountability mode. So a victim of the weather. Okay. I'm supposed to get snow tomorrow, right? So if I do something and I don't pack my winter coat, well, I'm a victim because I'm cold because of the weather. Well, really, I should have packed a winter coat. I've lived in Wyoming for 30 some years. I should know better than that, right? So focusing on that circle of control, we want to make that circle bigger to where those other two are just basically ribbons around the outside. And we just check in on those to know what's going on. But we know that our life is based in the circle of control. And honestly, happiness is our choice. So let's get into money a little bit. This is probably where I'll spend most of the time here. So this is what we call the deadwood finder from the school. And when you go through the school and we calculate the numbers and we find profit, well, if profit is a problem, then we want to know where to fix it, right? Because nobody likes to lose money. When you do the math calculation for profit, you have gross margin and overheads, okay? So gross margin's up top here and overheads are down here. So it's either going to be one of those two areas. If we go down the overhead route, there's 2 primary categories of overheads. One is land and one is labor. And if we keep going down those branches, the land is finding it and keeping it. So finding it meaning we do have to have real estate to run cows or farm or whatever it might be. So we do have to get it. And then upkeep is going to be the repairs and the maintenance. There's also going to be landlord relations in there too. So we have to find them and we have to keep them. And then in the labor part, there's 2 parts of labor. There's the people and the things. When I say things, I'm talking about the equipment that helps the people get the job done. With people, there's also one more branch too. With land, we always say that there's finding and keeping. Well, with people, there is finding and keeping. There's a cost to both of those too. So, we always talk about labor's always an issue. I will come back to that too. So that's the overhead branch down there on the bottom. If we go up the gross margin branch here, there's 2 areas. There's gross margin per unit and there's turnover. When we talk about turnover, we're going to talk about increasing numbers or starting new enterprises. So, in a cow-calf ranch, increasing numbers would be run more cows. New enterprises would be let's keep the yearling steers over, or let's add a sheep enterprise, right? Those are going to be different enterprises. If our turnover is good, then it's going to be let's keep going up, and it's in gross margin per unit. Gross margin per unit is going to be gross product and direct costs. So direct costs are the ones that change per unit of production. So for each cow, we're going to have, a different set of feed and health. I'll come back to this interest here in a second too. If it's in gross product, then we want to look at price and production. With production, there's in a cow-calf ranch, we're going to call it repro and gain. So a reproduction, we still need cows to get pregnant. Okay, low conception rates is probably going to lead to low profitability. No one ever said that's not important. And gain, we need to have healthy cattle. With price, there is the market and your marketing, two very different things. So those are the different branches of we'll call it our profit tree here. When we go down those branches, let's just spend a little bit of time on each one here. So I told you I want your circle of control to be bigger. And so there's a lot of things in here that we think we don't have control over, but we actually do. And so we do have complete control over the people in our business and the things in our business. If we have too much machinery, we can find other ways to not need that machinery. With people, labor is always an issue. We talk about this is a paradigm, but every school we go to across the States and Canada, labor is always hard to find by. Well, is there a lack of labor or is there a lack of a good boss? Right? We've all worked for good and bad bosses. So we need to set a culture up in our ranch business that is attractive to employees and and we do keep people for years. The land. So, we get it, we have to find it, and we have to keep it. I brought up landlord relations already. With turnover, with new enterprises, one thing we often see is people chase new enterprises because there's a shiny dollar at the end of it, right? Well, it's easy to find that now we're running 8 or 10 or 15 different enterprises. And so we want to make sure that these enterprises, we're doing the right ones, and we're doing them well, and we're doing them at scale. So it's always easy to pick on direct market beef here. Well, we can add maybe a couple $1,000s to some cull cows by turning them into beef, but we find that we only made $1,500, and we hated doing all the phone calls, we hated taking her to the butcher and this and that, right? So we want to tie all this back to time invested versus money returned versus your mission and your vision too. We want to make sure you're enjoying it. So that's the turnover. In the direct cost one here, we've got I have the interest is crossed out because if you want to use our benchmarks, we calculate the opportunity interest. So that one's just to remain constant. But feed and health programs, you guys have complete control over your feed protocols, your grazing protocols, all of that stuff gets tied in there. And then production, repro and gain, like I said, it's important to get cows bred, important to keep calves healthy. Those are all important, but that's typically what we're already very good at. So we don't spend a lot of time there. When we go into price, this one's kind of my favorite to pick on because we always think that the market is out of our control, right? Well, there's parts of it that are out of your control, but there's most of it that's in your control. So the market that is out of our control. The market is just the interaction of 8 billion people interacting on the world, right? In Earth. So does a drought in Brazil affect the market? Yep, it sure does. Does the war in Ukraine affect the market? Yep, it sure does. Does a new administration every 4 years in the States change the market? It absolutely does. But we get to choose which market we're in. If you're in a cow-calf operation, you have so many options. You can sell 300-pound calves, 400-pound calves, 5, 6, 7, 8s, 9s, long yearlings. If you're in the female market, you can sell replacement heifers, bred heifers, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, pairs, spring calvers, fall calvers. And we also get to decide when we sell during the year, so we can decide what we sell and when we sell it. So for cattle, there's a lot of times where there's $100 to $200 per head swing just throughout the year, depending on what sale you enter or what contracts you sell. For grain farmers, there could be 50 cents a bushel, depending on what time of the year you sell. So there's so much in our control that it's way better to have that mindset of, I can project profit and I can do everything in my nature to make sure I meet those profit targets. Then the profit isn't enough though. So when we look at accounting or financial records, we want to remember that there's two financial statements. One's the income statement and one's the balance sheet. So this profit, the Deadwood Finder, we're only looking at the income statement or the calculation of profit and loss. What we do with that profit is also important too. So, at the class, we'll ask, what are some common uses of profit? Well, we could pay down debt, we could reinvest in the business, we could reinvest outside of the business, we could do, a multitude of things come up. So when we look at profit, if we want to say we're going to reinvest it, well, then we need to know what our balance sheet is doing. And so I love this Kiyosaki model here. He's got it drawn out fairly simple. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this is what Kiyosaki's rich dad drew out for him on a napkin when he was like 8 or 10 years old. And so he looked at the 3 different classes. We've got the poor, the middle, and the rich, right? And he said the poor, their income just goes in one pocket and out the other pocket. Everything gets spent in basic food and living expenses. The middle class actually does it a little bit worse, because the middle class actually skips the asset column and uses loans to create more expenses, the way he defines it. What happens when we get a raise? We buy a bigger car, we get a bigger house, we do this, right? So we have to beat that down to make sure we're putting money where we need to. Because remember, Kiyosaki defines an asset not as something we own, but something that puts cash in our pocket. It's always easy to pick on your house. So does the house put money in your pocket or take money out of your pocket? Well, our personal house, we pay a mortgage, we pay insurance, we pay real estate taxes, we pay for repairs, and the list goes on and on. On a balance sheet, I might put that on as an asset, but in real life, we have to realize that things that take money out of our pocket are liabilities, actually. And so this is what he calls the rat race, the middle class here. The rich, or the upper class, is going to look at putting money into assets that put cash back in our pocket and make income. And now Kiyosaki's not opposed to using debt. So he's not afraid to use debt to buy other assets that create cash flow. Okay, so I use the personal house in the middle example. A rental house is what he uses for a lot of examples in his books. And so you can borrow money and buy a rental house, and as long as you keep the renters in and paying their bills, they essentially pay your bill for you. So that could be an example of good debt. And so Kiyosaki, he really wants to push, we need to define what assets are to us and define what investing is to us too. So the biggest one I ask here is, how does your cash flow? I want to know, if you really took a deep dive in your business, how does your cash flow? Because we've got the income statement on the top and the balance sheet on the bottom, and then these dark lines are going to be the cash flow. That's the kind of the glue that holds everything together and tracks where everything's coming and going from. So that's one thing I always like to push on people. And then also, Kiyosaki has the 4 ways to make money too, right? So moving from an employee to self-employed to a business owner to an investor, and that's going to track how money comes in and out of your pockets. So just wanted to put this out there. We've got the YouTube channel, Ranching for Profit, and then we've also got Profit Tips blogs. Those are our bi-monthly articles that we send out. YouTube channel's got all kinds of videos and stuff that you can look. We split the school based on 4 areas: people, money, land, and production. And those are generally categorized in those areas. So you can go in and watch videos on those. And then Just wanted to put our schools up here. We've got Oklahoma City next week, and then we've got a couple summer schools. And then, as most of you guys know, most of our schools are in the winter time. So November, December, January, February, those will be hitting our websites here pretty soon. We're just getting hotel contracts finalized and everything. If anyone wants to take a February vacation to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, that one's usually there too. So, and then the other one we do that's fun is we do a young rancher school. The one in Buffalo, Wyoming, we lead that as RMC, and then South Dakota and Nebraska, those are both, we're hosted by associations there. So if you want information, everything should be up on our website there on our schedule. So I tried to get through that, Jared. Looks like we've got 6 or 7 minutes here. So are there any questions for me? I wasn't watching the chat or anything.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jordan. We appreciate that. Super, super cool. So as you give us the breakdown on the days now, you've consolidated down into, is it 5 days now or 6 days? What's the school schedule look like?
The long range is going to be 6 days.
Okay.
We've got 2 more. We tried the 5 days, and we felt like those were just a little too condensed. And so we're going to go to 6. And so they're going to start Mondays at 8 a.m. and then they're going to end Saturday at noon. So there'll be 5 full days and a half day on Saturday. That will be the reason for that being, hopefully it saves a day, kind of protects Sundays for people to travel. And then we'll start fresh Monday at 8 a.m. So yeah, 5.5 is the new norm.
I like that.
But we had the Oklahoma City and Billings one, we had already had those scheduled and contracts and registrations in, so we didn't change those mid fly there. Yeah.
What are the typical results that you see from people that come to the Ranching for Profit School? What changes do they make? What results in profitability, peace of mind, both tangible and intangible results?
As far as intangible results, the biggest one is just mindset, challenging those paradigms, and then networking. I'm still amazed at the networking of the schools and just how many of our organizations cross paths, and the world gets smaller and smaller as we keep going down this. So that's the biggest one to me, is just networking, and iron sharpens iron. So that's, we want to hang out with people that are going to push us to be better. So that is to me, that's the biggest change I see in people, just the mindset and the way they look at things. Yeah, I wish I could tell you that if you come to the school, you could, triple your profits or something like that, but I don't have that data handy.
Right. Yeah. I know it's very much contingent upon the application of the principles, right?
Yep, absolutely.
It can be just like Christianity. We all have access to the Bible. Doesn't mean that we all live it perfectly. Absolutely not, right? We strive to.
Yep, that's right.
That does not discount the viability of the truth that the book contains, or the truth that the school contains. And very, very cool. Who would be the ideal person to attend the Ranching for Profit School? Who's it a good fit for, and maybe who's not a good fit?
We get this question come across quite a bit, because it's expensive. The school's $3,000 plus travel plus food. It's a week of your time. So we always do ask people, what's your intent? Is your long-term intent to become a business, to do this? Then it's a fit. I feel like we could place most of our participants in 3 groups, right? The multi-generational ranch with the next generation coming back, ranching at full scale. That to me is kind of our core client, I would say. So it's always a fit for them. I'm going to call it, the next would be the side hustles. And so I run 75 cows, but I have a town job. Well, a side hustle can still be a profitable side hustle that you treat like a business. And so I still think it fits for them. And then we do get a lot of ranch managers, work for absentee landowners or wealthy landowners. And I always tell people, wealthy people don't lose money. That's not in their game. If there's some other stuff going on with the ranch too, but I feel like most of those 3 are there. So if you can put yourselves in one of those buckets, I think it's it's a fit for you. I also really like people too that come with other industry experience. You know, they ran a long landscaping business in town, or a construction company, or something like this, and now they've bought a little acreage, and it's always fun to see those other industries apply their principles and see how they apply to school too.
Cool. Yeah, that's really good. Jen asked from the slide,
Yes.
the deadwood finder, why is the interest crossed out?
So that's the opportunity interest that we use on the capital invested in the cow herd. We cross it out because to use our benchmarks, we make everyone apply that, so that all the other ones you have control over. But that one we want to keep it consistent, so we make sure to use our benchmarks right. We're comparing everyone apples to apples.
Yeah, and
yes, we still do 10%. We get
yeah,
less arguing in the class than when interest was at 3 and 4%, though. So that's one
right.
benefit of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think 10% is a good opportunity cost across the board charge.
Yep.
when you're putting your money, if it's your own money, I mean,
Yep.
man, you ought to be able to invest at 10% in something out there. Pretty low risk investment.
Yep.
Caesar's
Yep.
asking,
Right.
what's a website? Where do we go to learn more and to register for the school?
So maybe I'll just paste our website in the chat there real quick.
Yeah, that'd be good. And I encourage, again, you guys save this, put this in your resource file from this. If you're not there right now and you're like, man, either for price or time commitment, or you're not at the scale, put that on your bucket list to go to the school. I've been multiple times. I was involved in the executive link, and many of the relationships that I still have today, including many of the people who have spoken and are yet to speak on this summit, came from my involvement with RMC and the Ranching for Profit School. And so that's just the caliber of people that go to the school, and the teachers are great. The content is amazing, and highly recommend it. So any last thoughts, Jordan, as you before we switch over to our next presenter?
Nope. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I know that's kind of my fault as a presenter. So don't be afraid anyone to reach out to me. It's just Jordan@ranchingforprofit.com.
Hey, that's perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Jordan. We appreciate you participating. So yeah, Margot, put those in the chat as well, and your YouTube channel on there. So yeah, copy, paste those into your notes and keep it for future reference. Meaning tomorrow, go back over your notes, guys. Don't say, oh, someday I'm going to. Catch it while it's fresh. Share it with your team. Okay, here's our chance. We're back on track here. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, guys. Yep.